I'm Andre Faust. Earlier this evening, I was at the public consultation for the pre-budget for 2017-2018. It started at 7 and ended at 9, and from what I could see, it was about 75% capacity. We did have a special guest there. That was the leader of the opposition, Blaine Higgs. He was there to see how great Liberals make money. had to take a little dig at Blaine. Anyway, the format of this consultation was basically have X numbers of table. I'd say there was probably maybe 20 tables there with 6 to 7 people per table. 3 questions were given to the table. It was all the same questions. Every table had to answer the same question. Each table had a facilitator, and there was only a very limited time to discuss each of the 3 questions. Once the discussion was completed, then the facilitator would give the presentation to the rest of the group. Anyway, there was 3 questions that were asked to consider, and I'll read this right verbatimly. As we consider the 2017-2018 budget, there are certain questions that come to mind that we would value the input of New Brunswickers on. The first question: should the plan to return to balance by 2021 be accelerated, slowed down, or maintained as currently outlined? If the timing of the plan is changed, how should it be changed and why? Question 2. Are there new or other priorities that should be invested in? If so, how and who should pay for it? The final question was one of the questions that had the most responsive and the most diverse response to. Question number 3, with the ongoing focus on the need to address the effects of climate change, how should revenue raised from a carbon price be put back into the economy? That one there was, I thought, was one of the more detailed questions as far as the responses. But when you wash it all down, the majority of the tables said they believed that any revenues generated from that carbon tax should go back into developing green energy or green energy alternative businesses as an incentive to keep that market growing. Now, during the course, and I think it was on, I forget which one of the questions that was, but one of the presenters basically was pushing the idea of privatization. Well, privatization on the surface does look good. I mean, it's a quick fix, no doubt about it. But on the long term, that's where the problem comes in. You sell out all your government assets to private enterprise. At the beginning, yes, it'll be cheap, but then as time goes on, because businesses are profit-oriented, the cost is going to keep going up, so it'll become more expensive for New Brunswickers to buy the service or the commodity. So that one there, kind of personally, I thought that was kind of out of place because this forum isn't really to push that idea. My feeling was probably a stakeholder who wanted a little bit more of the pie. Human nature is that, isn't it? But before we go on to the actual recording, I'm just going to read out the basic intent. I'm not going to go too far into it because, I mean, this is well, let's take a look. It's a small document, but it's 9 pages, and I'm not going to read 9 pages. But I will cover the first 2 paragraphs, and I'm over 20, so I better take my glasses off. Okay, the Pre Budget Consultation 2017 to 2018. Your government listens to New Brunswickers. Earlier this year, government released its multi-year plan to return balance to our finances. This plan was built by New Brunswickers through an extensive engagement process known as the Strategic Program Review. Our plan will balance the budget by the year 2021. This timeline strikes the balance Brunswickers want. Our plan will be to balance the budget by the year 2021. The timeline strikes the balance New Brunswickers want between fiscal responsibility and investments in jobs, education, healthcare. To reach this balance sooner would mean deep cuts that New Brunswickers do not need or want. And New Brunswick would not accept that. So that kind of gives a flavor to what was going on this evening. Now, I know, I've had previous discussion and received personal messages on my Facebook and emails and whatnot, in regards to these consultations. And, a lot of people think they are hogwash. Well, no, they're not hogwash because it becomes evidence. If you're at a meeting and you discuss ideas and the government says, yes, they're going to implement them, and they don't. Well, you were there. You're in a position to do something about it. If you think that these meetings are just a friggin' joke and you don't attend, hey, guys, you're shit out of luck when it comes to friggin' any further criticisms that you have, because you had the opportunity at these meetings to do something about that. And I'd say the same thing whether it was a Conservative Party that was hosting these kind of meetings, if it was the Green Party, if it was the NDP Party, if it was the People's Alliance. When these political parties hold these kind of meetings, you go to them and you voice your concerns if you have any. It's just one of those things, and that's what democracy is all about, isn't it? Failing to do so, you're putting your future in other people's hands because they'll guess to what you want. And we know when you guess and speculate, you always get it wrong. Anyway, in the upcoming video, the Honorable Kathy Rogers, Minister of Finance, is going to discuss this plan in a little bit more detail, so you'll get a little bit more insight to what's going on too. Here's Kathy Rogers.
Thank you so very much. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be here, and it's very good to see the room filled up. So I want to really thank you for taking the time to come out on this rainy evening. I know it's a lot easier to stay at home, so I really do appreciate the effort and the initiative, and by your very action of coming out, it means you are engaged, and I do appreciate that, so thank you. I'd like to say a special welcome as well to my colleague, Minister Stephen Horstman, from your hometown here in Fredericton, and Minister Horstman was Minister of Justice and Public Safety, Deputy Premier, still Deputy Premier, and now he has family and children? Yes. And very happy that he was able to bring his care and concern to the portfolio that I had a lot of care and concern for as well. So I really appreciate him coming out here tonight and being among you. And I'm sure he will be ears listening to the comments as well, and he will be bringing your feedback into government. I also would like to take the time to welcome the Leader of the Opposition, Blaine Higgs, with us here tonight. I really do thank you for coming out. And MLA Sherry Wilson, thank you. And I see representatives from a variety of different groups here, and so I really do thank you for coming out. Some of you I've met before, some of you I haven't, so hopefully over the evening I can mingle a little bit with you as well and get to know you a little more too. So this evening is about a few things. So what I might say is that earlier this year, we released our multi-year plan, our multi-year fiscal plan to return to a balanced budget by the year 2020. And we wanted to do this in a way that protects our finances, but also protects and invests in the priority areas of New Brunswickers. New Brunswickers have told us that they want us to invest in jobs, in education, and in healthcare. And so we're now implementing the plan that has been laid out. However, it's very important that we stay engaged because we recognize the importance of ongoing dialogue. Situations change, and it's important that we always remain open to listening to you. with the important issues to you in your day-to-day lives. So aujourd'hui, la conversation se poursuit. So today is about continuing that conversation. As you know, earlier in our mandate, we started with the strategic program review, which was an in-depth and widespread consultation process around the province. And we shared our fiscal plan with you, New Brunswickers. So many of the hard decisions have been made already in our last budget, but there's still a lot of work to do. So we need to keep on track in order to achieve our goals. So tonight is some of the things that we want to address this evening is we want to make sure that we engage you. So tonight there's going to be a lot of dialogue. I'm only going to speak for a few minutes. We're going to give you the opportunity to speak. We're going to talk about the economic conditions that we face, give you a fiscal update, and I'll share with you a little snapshot of where the money comes from and where it goes, so the revenue and the expenditures. A little bit about our strategic program review measures, our multi-year plan. I'll show you a chart, how it's laid out so that we will have a surplus by 2020-21. And we'll listen to some considerations for this upcoming budget and beyond. And we'll just listen and hear if you have other priorities that you have not been able to speak about. So that's our plan for the evening. So the development of the multi-year plan that we did share with you, I wanted to say, could not have been accomplished without the active participation of New Brunswickers. So right from the very beginning, my colleagues and I toured around the province, and we heard from New Brunswickers of all walks of life. And from this, we developed the 2016-17 budget. It saw several rounds of dialogue sessions. In fact, we not only consulted people through the strategic program review process where we got your ideas about where we can find some savings and where we can find some revenue, but we also did chambers of commerce tours. We did 22 economic summits around the province because we wanted to know from you on the ground, in the field, where we can make some strategic investments to grow jobs, to help to support business growth. And we did tours of the regional service commissions, so we went to rural and urban areas throughout the province. And we did tours on minimum wage and employment standards. And as you all know, there was a recent select committee on climate change, which brought a lot of dialogue from New Brunswickers. And that brought forward a number of recommendations. And tonight we are your first on the Pre Budget Consultation tour. So very happy to be here, and really I look at tonight as one more opportunity for us to hear from you. We have been listening to New Brunswickers from the beginning, and we remain committed to continue listening. We have heard from some of the dialogue sessions. I need to say we've had over 3,000 people attend our dialogue sessions, including over 1,800 as our budget last time was being prepared. More than 9,000 ideas are submitted online, by email, or by regular mail. And so this level of participation does set the foundation for the fiscal framework that we did lay out. We took New Brunswickers' top priorities into consideration. So building on that success and the conversations that we've had with New Brunswickers, crisscrossing the provinces. So, je suis heureuse de constater que nous poursuivons le dialogue en tenant une conversation aujourd'hui dans le cadre des consultations pré-budgétaires. Nous avons un plan, mais le travail n'est pas achevé pour autant. Il faudra continuer à faire preuve de prudence et de rigueur pour atteindre nos objectifs financiers. So it's very, very important that if we want to continue staying the course on our fiscal plan to get rid of our deficit, show a surplus, and begin reducing our net debt, then we need to stick to our plan, but it's very important that we do so by paying attention to New Brunswickers' priorities. So these are just a few snapshots. I don't know what you can see of them, but a few snapshots of our economic and fiscal and population and labor situation. So in recent years, I have to say the economic story for New Brunswick has been pretty bleak. We saw little economic growth. We have seen population declines. You know, as a former sociology professor, I remember talking about the population shifts that were looming and coming to us for many, many years. But we're now facing the real crunch of a population demographic shift that is a challenge for New Brunswick. So we're seeing population declines. We were seeing young people leaving the province for other areas, weak labor markets, widening gap between New Brunswick and Canada with some of our key economic indicators. So this has been pretty bleak for a number of years. Fortunately, I am really happy to say I believe our story has started to change. And I believe we need to start speaking about our positive story. So I'm not going to speak to the details on every single chart here on the slide, but a common element among them is that they all show recent improvements in the provincial economy. So we see real GDP in the first chart growing. We see population looking better on the second one to the right on the top. We see labor market trending upwards. And we also see wages and spending, income and consumption going up. So these are good indicators of growth. These are good indicators that the plan that we've laid out is a good plan. So in the discussion document that we did circulate and that we put available online for you, I hope many of you had the opportunity to read it, we note that in 2015, we saw the highest level of economic growth since 2010. Well, you know what? Since that paper was created, I'm pleased to note that Stats Canada published the latest estimate of GDP, which shows growth reached 2.3% in 2015. And that is not the highest level since 2010, it's the highest level since 2004. So this is good news for New Brunswick. In addition to this positive news from Stats Canada, we've also seen 4 consecutive quarters of population growth, employment trending up. Like I said, average weekly earnings and retail sales growth has been faster than Canada on a whole on a year-to-year basis. All positive signs of our economic growth. However, we cannot sit back and say the rest is all a good news story. We have to realize that economic headwinds remain. And as slower growth projections for Canada and the US, and of course the closure of the potash mine in Sussex last winter, remain factors that will limit our economic growth potential over the next couple of years, we have to take seriously the importance of sticking to our priorities and sticking to our plan. Over the long term, for example, our aging population proportion will remain a challenge. You know, we probably many of you in this room have seen that pyramid shaped like this, which shows on the bottom 1945 to 65 when all the baby boomers were born. Well, we can't exactly, statistically, truthfully, tip that upside down, but we can almost do that to the point that we have fewer people working to support the more people who are now aging. I'm one of those aging baby boomers. So it does mean that we have to pay very, very close attention to our economic realities. So this is why I'm encouraged to see the steps that the Government of Canada has taken to address these challenges. For example, introducing a pilot project to increase the number of immigrants into Atlantic Canada. There's a number of things we have to do to sell our province, to show our province as the place to live, work, and raise a family. So I'm happy to see that the story is changing, and we can see some examples here of commentaries that have been recent in various places. So I don't know if you can read them or not, so I'll just read a couple. New Brunswick's economy grew by 1.9% in 2015, the highest rate in Atlantic Canada. That was CBC News. Another one, New Brunswick's population increased after 3 straight years of population decline, Telegraph Journal, September. Employment in the province on an upward trend since the spring, Stats Canada. And operators say tourism numbers up this summer in New Brunswick, Global News. So these are examples of positive trends. We have been a growth leader in the region this past year. We need to celebrate this. Our population has increased for the first time in 3 years. Employment trending up. Tourism numbers good. That said, global growth has slowed, and so we cannot expect levels of growth that we experienced in the past. So we have to set our expectations accordingly. So just as we have seen improvement in our economy, our fiscal situation is also improving. We have moved beyond the days of deficits in the $600 million range, or $600 million plus range even. And we're now on a path towards balanced budgets. Nous avons géré judicieusement nos finances et nous avons constaté des améliorations au cours des 2 dernières années. Our first budget had planned for a deficit of $326.8 million. And with the recent release of our public accounts, that came in at $260.5 million. This is an improvement of over $66 million from what we planned in our budget. We just released our second quarterly update for this year's budget and have seen an improvement from this as well. In fact, if we don't require our contingency reserve, which we're hoping we don't, our deficit will be $231.6 million. So you can see the trend going down. Simply put, we have effectively managed our finances, but we need to remain focused on meeting and hopefully exceeding these targets that we've set, because we do have fiscal targets, fiscal objectives that we want to meet. So we have to acknowledge the progress that we've made so far, but recognize that there's still a lot of work to do. Our major financial indicators have trended in the wrong direction over the last several years. For example, our net debt has doubled since 2006-07. This is not a good news piece. Net debt to GDP continues to climb and is now over 41%. And our net debt per capita now tops $18,000. These trends all point to the need to change the status quo and take action and demonstrate a clear need to establish a plan and to stick to it. So we cannot and will not let these trends continue. I showed you already some of the positive comments that we have seen in media, but there are also some others that should be noted. We continue to see notes, for example, of caution being raised. Richard Saillant recently noted in his latest book the challenges our demographics pose on our ability to deliver services. And I can tell you I read his book cover to cover before it hit the bookshelves. And he's got some good points. It's a good warning. The Bank of Montreal recently downgraded its economic forecast on the province. And our Auditor General has noted on many occasions the importance of getting our fiscal house in order, while DBRS has commented that our credit rating is based on our ability to stay on our plan. We take these seriously. So where does the money come from? Where do we get our revenue? It's important to understand this, because if we all want to be partners and work on fiscal sustainability and fiscal health together, we need to understand our realities. So our own source revenue now represents almost 65% of provincial government revenues, with federal transfers providing the remainder. For example, personal income tax and HST are the two largest sources of tax revenue for the province. But there are others, and they include property tax and corporate income tax. There's other sources of revenue too that include royalties, sales of goods and services, and returns on investment from crown corporations such as NB Power, NB Liquor, NB Lotto and Gaming. So federal transfers as a share of total revenue, it should be noted, has been on the decline in recent years. You've probably heard many times how your government is in strong dialogue with our federal partners on helping us in this area. As recent as 2009-10, federal transfers represented over 40% of our revenue. But as of this year, this budget, federal transfers represent 35% of provincial government revenues. So we're seeing a decline here. This includes not only major transfers like equalization, health and social transfers, but conditional funding for areas such as infrastructure, labor market, and housing. And this has concerned us over the years. So that's where the money comes from. But where does the money go? How do we spend the money? Well, we have to exercise discipline in our spending. We have to focus strategically on our investments. That plays an equally important role in balancing our finances. The two largest expenditure areas, I'm sure you can guess, health and education. They're our biggest spenders in our province. Combined, just those two areas represent approximately 58% of our spending. Adding in our spending on social services, almost 2 out of every $3 are spent on health and senior care, education, and social services. It's important to understand this. Other, of course, represents all other spending undertaken by government, which includes everything from environment, general government, pensions, for example, public safety, just to name a few. Le rétablissement de l'équilibre budgétaire nous aidera à réduire le coût de service de la dette publique et à ensuite utiliser les économies afin de fournir les services qui sont importants pour les gens du Nouveau-Brunswick. Just imagine for a minute what could be done if we reduced our debt servicing costs, which are at approximately $700 million a year. It's one of our largest expenditure items too. Getting back to balance, therefore, and reducing our debt servicing costs can also protect our finances in the event that we move from the low interest environment of today. Very scary. So to successfully achieve our plan, again, we've undertaken or introduced a number of measures. And here's just some of them that have been already undertaken or are currently underway. Expenditure measures include consolidation of contact centers, reduction of the number of government departments and senior management, even reducing the number of people on boards and agencies and commissions, centralizing human resources. These are just a few. On the revenue side, we've increased the provincial portion of HST from 8% to 10%. But you know what? As we did this, it's really important to note that we recognize the need to protect low and middle income families. So we didn't want this to be a burden to them. So they are protected, and we did this by introducing an HST credit. And as many may know, that people received their first 2 payments in October. We've also increased corporate income tax rate from 12 to 14%, and we've raised tobacco taxes. And again, these were done through consulting New Brunswickers. So the fiscal plan then outlines the plan to return to stable budgets. And as you can see in this chart, we need a plan, and we need to be diligent in implementing it. By 2021, it is our goal to have a $21 million surplus instead of the deficit. Even though we see it going down consistently, it's a good trend, and it's a reflection of the choices that we have collectively made. It strikes a balance between expenditures and revenues. And so we have begun the necessary work to fully implementing this, but it still will take strong fiscal management to achieve the goal. So now this brings us to where we are today. Même si un plan est actuellement en place, la consultation et l'apport des gens continueront à jouer un rôle important, non seulement pour que nous comprenions les priorités des gens du Nouveau-Brunswick, mais aussi pour que nous réussissions à atteindre nos objectifs financiers. And you know, we recognize that circumstances may change over time, and that we also may need to make some necessary adjustments to the plan to address changing priorities. For example, oftentimes the province has little direct control over the economy and revenue. For example, developments like the potash mine closure in Sussex was not anticipated, could not be anticipated. And that's why it's important to maintain an ongoing dialogue with New Brunswickers, and that is what we're doing here this evening and continuing onward. So as we consider the 2017-18 budget, there are certain questions that come to mind that we should value if we truly want the input of New Brunswickers, and we do. And some of these questions are that you'll be talking about this evening. Should the plan to return to the balanced budget be accelerated, slowed down, or maintained as currently outlined? And if you think that something should change, how should that be changed and why? Another question is, as I introduced, what other priorities might you have or new information that you'd like to bring to the table? And then finally, we know that climate change is real. We also know that we need to put a price on carbon. How should we do this? So these are very important questions that we would like to engage you in a discussion on, and I think that's where I'm going to close. And what I will do is show you how you can reach us, because in addition to having a productive dialogue this evening, we would invite you as well to send your input online in any format that you like here, by fax, by email, before December the 8th. And we welcome all of your feedback and all of your comments. So thank you so much for your patience and your attention in this presentation, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and I will mingle among you this evening to be a listening ear. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Ministre Rogers. Vraiment apprécié la présentation, mais la table pour la deuxième partie. Rogers, closing remarks are yours.
Oh, well, first of all, a great big thank you to Ben for being a great facilitator tonight. You did a great job. And thank you to everyone for the very constructive dialogue. He was right. You're a very good group for being concise and not one person dominating another. I didn't get to every single table. I tried, but my goodness, the time went too fast. I heard a lot of great ideas from people. I heard some common themes from you. And, I'm hearing too what is important. I'm hearing either stay the course or accelerate a little bit, but make sure we protect certain things that are important to New Brunswickers. Accountability is a strong theme, a strong desire. Of course, there's some variability in people's responses too, and that's always the case, and that's one of the very difficult things actually about being a minister and a government representative, is that we need to and want to hear all of the perspectives, and it's very important to take all of them into consideration and find a balance that we can strike that is good for New Brunswick and meets the needs of New Brunswickers to have a quality of life. So thank you for a lot of these. I want to thank particularly the young students in the back too. It's so good to have student engagement, isn't it? And it's great to and seriously, not to put less priority on everyone else who's here. It's really important that we get a wide variety of people engaged in these sessions. So if you have friends that live in other places of the province,